So I got up early this morning and watched the first couple of episodes of WandaVision with my friend here, McWanda, and my wife. And I probably should have given my wife top billing there. So my initial reaction to the first episode, I loved it. I thought it was great. There are a bunch of sort of MCU Easter eggs in there, which I'll let other people talk about that, people who know a lot more than I do. However, I did enjoy finding all of the pop culture Easter eggs, right? The names, concepts, and jokes from television shows from the 50s. If you like sort of old television shows like I do, then you're going to have some fun just looking for those, to be honest with you. Now, in my pre-watch video, I talked about three important concepts that I want to keep in mind as we sort of walk through this series together. If you haven't seen that pre-watch video, I definitely encourage you to take a minute and go watch that, because I'm going to be making some references to those concepts throughout this entire video series. Now, even though we've seen aspects of this episode in the trailer, the series or the episode does a great job of using that information in order to create a kind of tension within us. In other words, we're normally looking for a cohesiveness in a dominant narrative, right? In other words, we're looking for, okay, this is the story of Wanda and Vision in this episode. However, because we've seen aspects of it in the trailer, what the writers did here that was particularly interesting is they said, rather than you looking to create cohesiveness in how we're watching it, we want you to actually yearn for those narrative breaches that I mentioned in that pre-watch video, which is very different. Normally, we don't want narrative breaches. Instead, we want cohesive narratives. And in this sort of particular episode, and maybe for throughout the entire series, we're actually more interested in what breaches or breaks the narrative. But storytelling in the world of the 50s sitcom often had very soft breaches to their narratives. They didn't want to create large fractures, right? Because you don't want to disrupt the flow of the audience. So, well, with the exception of one, I suppose, Timmy falling down the well was a pretty large fracture. Now that I think about it, why didn't they just cover the frickin' well? I think Lassie sort of uncovered the well every day. I think he wanted to just get rid of Timmy. Wow. That went dark fast. Now, a narrative breach in a 50s sitcom was usually something like maybe a kid cheating on a test or lying to their parents about eating candy, right? These are certainly things that we would consider to be bad, but they're not major fractures, like life-altering fractures of a person's story arc. We get similar soft breaches in this first episode of WandaVision as well, with the exception of one event that's actually a kind of breach within the breach. See if you can go back, if you've already seen the episode, or if you haven't, see if you can pinpoint where you get this sort of multi-layered breach within a breach. Now, the dinner scene that we see in the trailer becomes a kind of site for a narrative breach, but even that is done in an exceptional way, because, as my wife pointed out, actually, when we were viewing this together, here the domestic life is the battleground and the superhero life becomes the kind of mundane, right? Wanda's able to use her powers, and it almost seems just kind of like, yeah, big deal, almost like everybody can do it kind of thing. Again, there are certainly people who are much more informed than I am about how Marvel handles its multiverse theories and whatnot. But I do think this notion of breaching a narrative breach is an interesting concept, and one that offers us a way into thinking about just how many levels down does this narrative actually travel here. As you watch this episode, the question that I think we come away with at the end is, Wanda is still human. How many breaches and levels of breaches can one person take before they snap and can no longer tell reality from unreality, or even tell one reality from another reality and from another sort of multiverse reality as well. Is this something that we should all be thinking about as we move in and out of our various realities, whether they be, face to face realities or sort of digital social media ones? How many breaches within breaches can we handle?